Welcome to the Heal and Transform podcast with your host, Andrew Ramsden. Andrew finds top experts to pick their brains about what coaches, therapists, and other complementary practitioners can do to level up and amplify the work so we can heal and transform the world together.
And here we are. G'day everyone. G'day coaches, therapists and healers and everyone else who's joined us today. On today's show, having a chat with Cam Aggs, who is a good mate of mine, but he's also a clinical psychologist and mindfulness expert. And today we're going to talk about his transition from more one-on-one clinical work to mixing in some more leveraged business models. So group training, group coaching, group therapy, and online training. And we're going to talk about the 5 friendship functions. So what the heck is that all about? We'll ask Cameron and he'll be able to sort us out. So without further ado, here he is now, Mr. Cam Aggs. Mr. Cam Aggs, how are you?
Good, Andrew. How are you doing?
Yeah, really well. Thank you so much for joining me today. We've been trying to make this happen for a while, but for different reasons, it hasn't sort of gone through. But I've been really looking forward to having this chat because we've been working together for, I think this is our 4th year working together.
Yeah.
We've designed and run programs together. We've delivered training together. We've had late night philosophical and spiritual conversations over a bottle of wine together about the meaning of life and everything else within it. And I've just been so impressed by your breadth of knowledge and the depth of your insights and wisdom, and also seeing you apply that to yourself through the ups and downs of the journey that is essentially entrepreneurship, which is not an easy thing. So such an honor to be able to finally do this and have this chat and share your wisdom with the world.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Now, you've been both a clinical psychologist focusing on one-on-one work, one-on-one sessions, but also you've been transitioning into more leveraged approaches, so the group therapy, the group training, online training, etc. What's that journey been like for you? What are the benefits of those different ways of operating in business, and what are the drawbacks?
Well, I think some of the advantages is in doing the group work, which I do in my private practice, for example. It's been a catalyst to refine what it is that I do in my individual work. There's this double up of IP and a refining really of the IP for the group, where I incorporate slides and worksheets and so on and so forth. So it makes me better at my bread and butter kind of stuff. And the same's true of the corporate training as well. I really noticed that from going from teaching clinicians about mindfulness through to doing a kind of like a pithy 1-hour presentation at PwC, which is a global accounting firm. And that's actually where, you and I started our work together, and refining this ethereal concept of mindfulness into a kind of a sequence, that we called the 5-step sequence. That could provide some degree of how-to for people when they're not naturally inclined towards self-reflection, contemplative practice, when they're more goal-oriented, achievement-focused individuals, how to really break that stuff down. And so for me, creatively, that's been a real part of the joy is to be able to workshop these resources for corporate clients, for group sessions, and then import that back into my bread and butter.
Yeah, it's been a really fun journey to be a part of and to watch you refine that work as we went. I know there's still heaps of value to the 5-step sequence, and I've seen that evolve now because you talk about more and more the 4 different aspects of mindfulness and less about the 5-step sequence. We always talked about this idea that we would get it into quite a rigid step-by-step process, because at the time we were working with technical leaders and engineers in particular who very auditory digital learners, they love those processes and that structure. But you always said at the time, you don't apply it in a strict order every time. So once you start to really become a master of the content, you mix and match the different tools. And I think that's where I've seen this evolve, as it's become much more this lovely blend of, here are the different aspects of it, and then you get to, like a master chef, you get to mix and match the ingredients for the particular situation that you're faced with.
I mean, that really is very true, isn't it? And it's through the doing of the material for clients, whether they're corporate clients or individuals, that we actually the model kind of is given birth. It's learning about what it is that we do through actually doing it, and struggling to refine it, struggling to bring it into the world in a pithy and meaningful way. And as you just referenced, we've got the 4 skills of mindfulness, for which the 5 steps, the 5 friendship functions is one of those skills, and which is basically about being a friend to yourself and treating yourself, in Jordan Peterson's words, like you're someone to whom you have an obligation to help. And I've certainly seen my thinking of that evolve over time, and yet this basic premise of treating ourselves like a friend, of someone to whom we have this obligation to help, is such a crucial thing for all of us, particularly high performers and particularly for entrepreneurs as well, because being an entrepreneur is a kind of it's a difficult thing to do, and we certainly need some emotionally focused coping skills to assist us in the long journey towards our goals.
Oh, isn't that the truth? It's, I can very much relate to that. It's not an easy journey as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I've just learned so much and taken away so much from working through this IP with you that I've then been able to apply to myself in my own journey, which has been really fantastic. And I mean, you just raised so many things there that I want to come back to, which is really great. Like the 5 friendship functions. I'm just going to take some notes. The emotion-focused coping. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And then, how we apply this. So what's really interesting to me, and this is where I had my mind blown repeatedly over the years, is that to me, mindfulness was always about a couple of things. I guess it was always about meditation. It was always about being present and in the moment and being grounded and sort of breathing.
Yeah.
But you've expanded my understanding of what mindfulness is all about. And you're talking about the 5 friendship functions, being a friend to yourself, I won't go into detail about what that's all about. We can talk about that later. I'll let you lead that discussion. And this emotion-focused coping, so it then starts to move into how you then relate to others as well, emotional intelligence, and how you manage other people's emotions and their state and be aware of that. So if you had to summarize, what is mindfulness then?
Yeah, I mean, mindfulness from a strictly Buddhist perspective, which is where the term comes, is paying attention to your object without forgetting it. So often that will be the breath, for example, and it's to continue to recollect the breath. If one is being mindful of walking, then one is constantly mindful of walking. So it is about directing and placing attention where one would like without forgetting the object of that, which of course is notoriously difficult. Thoughts and self-preoccupations, me, as Sam Harris talks about, meditation is about sitting with the most boring, repetitive person in the world, which is yourself, when you rob yourself of any distraction. Mindfulness in its psychological application has been kind of broadened from this more strict attentional regulation practice and definition into a more emotionally focused, how we attend, the quality of that. And John Kabat-Zinn uses a lovely phrase, affectionate attention, non-judgmental attention, which is also implied in the Buddhist definition, interestingly, but more deeply applied in psychological contexts, given the proclivity that we have in our culture towards self-judgment and self-criticism. And so what I would be talking about then in the applications of mindfulness for our well-being is in part attentional, so how we deploy our attention and what's most adaptive for us in the present moment, because sometimes thinking and reflecting is the most adaptive and being aware of our thoughts, feelings, and all of those things, but not when we're in the middle of a conversation with somebody, at which point in time having our attention more extroverted and attending to the person, and the ability then of kind of like a flexibility to go backwards and forwards from the inner world to the outer world, of course, is really what we're seeking to cultivate in this regard. And to know what's most adaptive in terms of thinking and planning and doing and being kind of attentive to all of that, versus when it's not adaptive to be in our head thinking and about the future or the past, and when it's more adaptive to be in the sensory experience, the simplicity of the present moment. So in many regards, it's about flexibility of attention. It's about what's adaptive to be paying attention to. And the ceiling for this is all set by the degree to which we can pay attention to our emotional experience as well. Because when we're emotionally not in a good space, it's very hard to be mindful in the sense of having a peaceful mind, an adaptive mind, a flexible mind.
Beautiful. Yeah, I can really see how the practices that you teach around mindfulness and how to just be present and be in your body and turn on that parasympathetic nervous system so you can relax underpins everything else, including the emotional intelligence and how you operate with others. In fact, I think some reflection on the different aspects of the work, so to speak, that coaches, therapists, and healers do in all of its gamut across all of the different disciplines. And there's a whole list of things. And so from accountability to you need skills and knowledge to strategy and planning to mindset and intention to then the emotional and physical healing, which you do through one-on-one therapy. And then underpinning all of that is just being in your body, because if you're not present and in your body, none of the rest of it matters. You can't effectively do any of the rest of it. And it's this beautiful ability to come back to that, be grounded and present all throughout the day for all of your interactions that I really love. And I think that's what I've taken away the most from working with you and learning from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point, the ability to come home and to rest and settle in the body. Because the world is often a very cerebral place to be, particularly for high performers and entrepreneurs that are seeking to make a difference and to develop resources and to get sales and all sorts of things. And if we are only out there in the world and only up here in our mind, I mean, that's great when we're winning, right? But when we're not and we're feeling it emotionally, the ability to come home and to sit with that, to tolerate those negative emotions and to be able to work them through on the breath, with acceptance and with letting go skills. So in that regard, it's kind of almost like having a medic, an internalized infirmary, an inner parent that we can leverage from when we need to. So sometimes we're out in the world, it's very intellectual, it's technological, it's doing. And then when stuff is rough, when we're a bit fatigued or weary from the journey, then this ability to come home into ourselves and to ground in our bodies is very important. But of course, that's catch-22, because what happens when emotionally and in the body we're not feeling so good? We're feeling like a failure because we messed that sale up, or we're having a hard time working through what our model is or our value proposition, or no one wants to return our phone calls. Well, then the inner environment is a sea of anxiety, and maybe we're angry with ourselves or a bit depressed. And so typically people try to avoid that space because that's a sucky, yucky space. And so we tend to extrovert our attention into technology, YouTube or drinking or whatever a person's addictive thing is. And so to come back into ground is a deceptively difficult thing to do, particularly when we're stressed or strained.
I love that. So the escapism, the self-medication or the self-soothing, we just want to sort of jump out into
Yeah,
these away from the emotions.
yeah,
And the other trap that I find, and this is very prominent, very common with coaches, therapists, and healers, is, and they'll apply this to themselves and they'll apply it to others, is to jump straight into solution mode. So
yeah.
here's what we've got to do, X, Y, and Z. We're going to get you out of this. Don't think negatively, think positively. I'm going to reframe you now. Here's another way to look at it. We're going to look at the positive angle here, and we just jump straight into that fix, solve.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I find is when that's being done to me, or I'm doing that to myself, I'm just running away from the problems. If it's being done to me, I'm feeling like, just don't tell me what to do right now. I'm angry, or I'm frustrated, or I'm just sad, or whatever it happens to be. Again, a beautiful lesson from working with you is that balance of emotion-focused coping with solution-focused coping. There's a time and a place. If you don't work with the emotions first and allow space for that, hold space for others with that, you can't effectively move through to solutions.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think, I work with lawyers in different moments. And what I find with them is that they'll often jump to solution, particularly when it comes to capturing a client with a free first session. And that high-performing lawyer will want to impress that client with their expertise and so on and so forth. And sometimes that's not actually what the client needs. When you think about the kind of person that comes to a lawyer, you're not engaging a lawyer typically when you're winning. You're coming often in the pit of despair, marriage breakup, a legal issue, a conveyancing problem, the death of somebody. So often very emotionally strained. And so for lawyers, part of what I teach is the ability to toggle back into an emotionally focused approach with their clients, so that they can kind of resonate with the client emotionally. The client can feel understood, and through feeling understood can feel safe and like they've been found. And at that moment, when they feel that, well, that's when we can start providing advice, solutions, and a pathway forward. But without coming back into that emotional resonance, the lawyer or the therapist or the coach risks this push and pull interaction with their clients, where the client doesn't feel understood. And then there are these kind of enactments. And why is this client so hard to help? They're self-defeating. And it's kind of like, well, maybe they don't feel understood by you. And so it's investing in that and the ambiguity of that, which is emotionally not so easy, where we really hit our pay dirt as it relates to the client work that we do.
It's not easy to tell, in your words, what moment is this? Is this emotion-focused moment, or is it solution-focused? And it depends on so many factors. What's going on for that other person? What's going on for you? What's going on right now? How much time do we have left in this conversation? Do we have a deadline to meet? Maybe we do just need to keep things moving, but if they're not ready to keep moving, you can come a bit of a cropper. I've had conversations with people where they just weren't ready to sort of keep going, and I pushed into solution mode, and that just didn't work at all. It just wasn't effective. The conversation breaks down at that point. So how do you know? How do you know what moment is this? When is the right time to push? When is the right time to just hold space?
That's an excellent question. How do we actually do that? And there's an in the moment element of this kind of flexibility of attention. So clients are people are always broadcasting what they want from us and what they need from us, even if they're not verbalizing it. By simply paying attention and being open and curious, by asking ourselves, what moment is this for the client? Are they asking me to provide expertise? Are they asking me to commiserate and empathize? Is this a moment now where I need to kind of set a boundary and, I'm not always going to be available to you by phone when you call? And when you call, you need to treat my people better. Is this a moment where I need to celebrate the client? Because you can see that they're saying, hey, I had this breakthrough. And at that moment, even though we realize, well, and I fall into this trap, right? Well, you haven't quite got it right technically. You kind of need to think about it all. Hey, don't forget to think about it like this. That client isn't asking for that right now. This moment isn't about that. It's about this. And that's a trial and error game. And certainly, persistently, that's where I come a crop up, is they won't get it technically correct. I'll try and add something of value when they're in a celebrate moment. So if they're in a celebrate with me moment and I'm there going, hey, you haven't quite gotten it yet, try that for size, that's just not going to land. So it's throwing good seed into barren soil. So when we are resonant with the client, we're always going to be putting seed into fertile soil and keeping them feeling fertile, even if sometimes the seed itself isn't the real seed that we're looking to plant. Now, so that's the kind of in the moment stuff. That's kind of like, what's the moment for the client? But like you're articulating, what's also the moment in the session, in the work that we're doing across time? How do we think about those considerations? Also, what's this moment for me? This client, like for me, for example, right? I want to feel like I'm helping people. I want to feel like I'm good at my job, and I love people to have breakthroughs. And so when someone's not psychologically minded, if I don't feel like they're having breakthroughs, then all of a sudden I'm getting tense because I'm not achieving what I need to be a good boy in order to feel like my needs are getting met through the client. And at moments like this, I need to come back and parent myself about, hey, Cam, you need to slow down, buddy. This client is where they're at in their change journey. Just slow down. But in order to slow down, I have to parent myself to slow down, and that's a crucial thing.
That sounds like a good segue to the 5 friendship functions.
Sure.
Because to me, parenting yourself is part of that, or that's kind of part of the process. In some respects, everything we've been talking about, working with the clients or working with yourself, can come back to these 5 friendship functions in terms of the things you need to be aware of, at least in my understanding. But before I butcher it further, maybe I should throw over to you and you can talk us through it. And I'll pull up a slide about that as well. That you can talk
Sure. Yeah. So this is really paying homage to the literature on attachment theory, and talks to the very basic needs that we have as relational beings initially, and primarily in relationship to our early life caregivers, in which we learn what it is to be a psychological being, and how we internalize these conversations into a mode of how we see ourselves and the degree to which we feel good in our own skin. And what we notice is that we're constantly talking to ourselves. Our thoughts aren't some thing that's just happening in the absence of a relationship with ourselves. And you know this yourself. You're in a conversation with yourself all the time. You're talking to yourself. So it's kind of like your company to yourself. And the question becomes, are you good company or are you not? And when are you good company and when are you not? Because some people are good company when all is going well, but not so good company when things aren't. And so what I am suggesting is that to be a really good friend to ourselves requires a set of functions that we would expect from any kind of friendship or relationship. So these are the 5 friendship functions that I think operate interpersonally for flourishing friendships and relationships, and that we need to cultivate inwardly for ourselves. So it all starts with a sense of acceptance, self-acceptance, and it moves there. So to just summarize, initially, if you, the listener, can think about someone that you're a good friend of, or in a friendship with, or a romantic partnership, or what have you, you need that person to accept you, for how you are. you're good at certain things and you're not great at other stuff. Your life is cool over here, but it kind of struggles, ain't so great over there. And all of us have this, good and bad mixture. And we would really hope that if we're in an intimate relationship, that someone that we're in a relationship with would accept these parts of us, right? The good and the bad, in marriage, for better and for worse, in sickness and in health. And we too try to give that same sense of acceptance to the people we're with. When you think of your lover, your boss, your children, your whomever, they're great at certain things and they're not so good over here. And it's a balancing act of accepting the whole person. And so equally, we're called upon to accept ourselves. So for me, I'm great with sophisticated psychological concepts. I'm very giving. I'm a good dad. But I've got shitty time management skills. And I struggle with just getting a really straight, as you know, Andrew, a really cool sales funnel around a singular product and then going from there. So I often struggle with disorganization in terms of wanting to be bigger than Ben-Hur. Brilliant for being a big picture thinker. Great for being eloquent, but really troubling when it comes to just creating a cogent sales funnel. And then that relates to the pain that I experience in terms of lack of sales growth, not being able to ditch the private practice and go into this magical thing where I've got a wonderful ecosystem targeting a discrete market, And so there's a pain with that I need to accept, along with the great, elements of that very same psychology. And so that's a really important part, both philosophically, I accept these things, I know these things about myself, but then in the moment when the pain of that emerges, that's the key part.
Oh, I can relate to that. I mean, the entrepreneur's journey, it's not easy. We're faced with this constant set of challenges to overcome, and that constant sense of, is this going to work? Am I betting my time and resources in the right place? Is this going to actually pay off? Is this how I make the biggest impact? How do you apply the 5 friendship functions when you're faced with those sorts of challenges? So say something didn't go right, a sale didn't go through, or it's not going the way that you'd hoped it was going. How do you then turn around and take that quite traumatic event, those emotions, and use the 5 friendship functions as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So the first thing is, if I can touch base with self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is the key, both for myself and for my life. So recently, the sale, a collaboration partnership deal that I was going for is something that I ended up overshooting, and it didn't work out the way that I wanted it. And what I had to accept is that, well, Cam, because you've got a busy life in terms of my parenting, in terms of my private practice, I only have a smaller window to do these partnership meetings. Sometimes I'll get it right, often I won't. I accept that about my life. I accept that collaboration partners in the nonprofit space have their own limitations as well. Great here, but limited there, right? So kind of getting that sense. And then, when we've been working together, you've seen, for me, when it's kind of been overwhelming, and I've just had to tolerate and acknowledge that this morning it's just not working for me. So I'm just going to have to can the meeting, for example, and postpone, and give myself that luxury to realize this is just not going to work for me today. If I'm not well enough to do it, it's just not going to be productive, and it's not going to be good for me emotionally speaking. So then from acceptance comes forgiveness. It's this sense of, well, gee whiz, I guess now reflecting upon it, I could have saved myself this pain if I only had have asked that question. Cam, why aren't you better at qualifying your leads ahead of time? Why aren't you more organized? Why don't you have forms and procedures to do this? Which is where, Andrew, I hope that you can kind of help me with some automated stuff for this. And I realize I've got to forgive myself because I'm just not great at that kind of thing. And so when I do that, I kind of let myself out of jail, because a lot of our strain is, yes, unwanted thing happening or wanted thing not happening. But then a lot of it's the self-recrimination and the struggle that we do in response to that. So from acceptance to forgiveness, from forgiveness to then also a sense of self-appreciation and appreciation for what's actually here. So no, Cameron, you can't have this thing that you're going for, but guess what? Your collaboration partner is open to that. So take that and build from there. And that's a big thing for me. I often overshoot and want to have the big piece of the pie all at once. But this is like, instead of going, oh, this sucks, they didn't give me what I want, and then just packing up my tools and going away, it's like, no, this is the foundation that you have, work from there. And so for me, that requires then also this limit setting of wanting to pack it in, of throwing it away when times get tough, and kind of just setting a limit on that behavior, focusing on the good elements of it, whilst caring for myself around the disappointments. And this is how the 5 friendship function starts to kind of come into a whole thing that's not just compassion, it's not just acceptance, it's not just looking on the bright side with gratitude or appreciation. It's all of the above in the different moments of what I need. Just like with clients, they will need different things in different moments as well.
Beautiful. I love that. I love how all those come together. And I've been borrowing from that framework as part of a morning routine now that I run every morning, where I just talk through to myself in the mirror and say, Andrew, I'm proud of you for this. And Andrew, I forgive you for that. And Andrew, I love you unconditionally. And, Andrew, here's my commitment for today. Here's how you're going to do better. So there's limit setting here as well. So it's just, it's made such a huge difference in my life to be able to say those things to myself in the morning, but also then to remind myself throughout the day when those stresses and strains strike, is to say, what, buddy, you're doing okay. And proud of you.
Buddy, you're doing good on one hand, and then, but buddy, I hear you on another. That sucks, And if we compare both of these things, then we're feeling good, someone loves us, and we're getting seen in our pain. It's just this beautiful mix. And I would say with that, and for healers and anyone in particular, it's not, I think we can often fall into the trap of thinking it's just about sending those positive messages or sending those forgiving or conciliatory messages. It's very important that we realize that whilst there's a sending of messages to ourselves and a state of mind that underpins that, there's also a receiving of those messages, a receiving which I pair with the breath. So I can say to myself, Cam, you're doing good, I'm proud of you. But then I want to breathe that in and get that someone is proud of me, that I'm worthy of being proud of, that I can soak the goodness of that. And so, again, it's this flexibility of attention, a flexibility of emotion, where we can be sending these messages in one moment and then receiving them in another.
Now, speaking of being proud and receiving, I have to say, I know the journey has been a challenge for us both on the entrepreneurial path. But you know what? You've had some really cool wins. So even when it comes to delivering training to hundreds of leaders all around Australia, face-to-face, online, through group scenarios, it's been an amazing journey to watch you kick these goals and have these wins. And as you know, I have a particular passion around technology, and I've helped you implement some of the technology behind that.
Yeah.
So firstly, I just want to say, well done.
Thank you very much.
To watch you kick those goals. And secondly, I just wanted to ask, what are some of the best online and digital tools and assets that you've developed for your business?
Well, I think the last thing that you and I were doing in the online component of the 8-week Taming Your Anxious Mind program, and we broke down mindfulness meditation into 4 phases. and we were so neatly able to see and help people realize the 4 phases of meditation. Whichever kind of meditation you're doing, from my reckoning, there's kind of 4 phases that one goes through with that. And to be able to explicate that and to provide clients and participants with an opportunity to navigate towards what they're actually doing has just been gorgeous. So, as you know, I'm a real stickler for it's not just talking about something or delivering something. It's about delivering it and then getting people, giving an experiential exercise with it, giving some kind of worksheet with it, multiple presentations of the same thing presented over time. From my perspective, is how people cultivate new behaviors, experience new levels of realization. And so that's where the tech becomes so helpful, is in the enabling of that. And, you and I have done a series of programs together where we also facilitate that through a snapshot that we provide with weekly engagements through email. And, we're talking now phone app. And I think for me, that really is it, particularly in the 4 Breaths course and other technologies around establishing mindfulness in the moment. It really is the repetition of the behaviors, interestingly, that leads to the cultivation of insight and capacity. And so for me, it's this multiple touch points. And delivering those in ways that are pithy, and that's what I love doing. That's the really fun stuff I find.
Yeah, fantastic. So the technology is really there just as an enabler for getting that repetition, getting those touch points. And it sounds like the online platform in particular, the email campaigns, are excited about the prospect of developing an app to again have those touch points and be everywhere with people, be in everyone's pockets. So yeah, there's definitely some cool tech there to help embed these ideas. Otherwise, I think what you're alluding to certainly has been my experience, is people turn up to the one-day face-to-face training, they love it, they have a fantastic experience, they're feeling great, it's all gone in, and then they get back to their desk, they get back to their home, their office, whatever it is, their family. Reality kicks in, and there's however many 100 emails there waiting for them, and it kind of can often then fall out the other side. So it's better.
Out of sight, out of mind. I mean, whether it's our lived histories growing up in the tens of thousands of interactions with our parents, whether it's the complexity of our lives and the amount of load that we carry, whether it's the schooling that we had, and then the organizations or the environments in which we work, there's just no shortage of do, produce, and no shortage of collisions with painful events. And here we are over one day or a seminar or even a 4-week, 8-week program. And when you think about it, here's this massive thing of childhood schooling, our culture, the work that we do, saying do, push, and then in my case, I'm going, hey, emotionally focus, come back in, talk to yourself with kindness, send and receive, breathe in, develop the capacities for that. And that's not easy. And people will get to where they get to with this. And there's always this tension that in my work, that no matter how wonderful the resources are, that there's no escaping at times the primacy of the relationship. And that's something that creates a challenge, I think, for all of us as coaches and as healers, depending on our bent with that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, probably getting close to our session, getting close to time.
Sure.
Do you have any other advice for practitioners, therapists, psychologists, coaches, healers, etc., in this space who are looking to step up their game, leverage themselves better, whether that's through group work or through online training? What would be your top tip for them to take away?
learn how to toggle back into a repair mode with yourself. And lots of forgiveness and self-tolerance for the imperfections of the journey. For me, the journey has been, hey, maybe that's my niche, or my shtick, or that. So, no, that doesn't quite work, but that gives me that lead, and then that gave me that opportunity, which I can now write a white paper from and develop the credibility piece for, even if that client doesn't then translate into more work. There's always a way of extracting some positive and building your business model, and we have different levels of revs around that. And for mine, my thing is a bit boom and bust. I'll kind of push real hard, and then I'll kind of lay low, and then I'll push real hard. And, so certainly for me, one of the things I have to accept and tolerate is that lack of consistency, that kind of all or nothing thinking that I fall into. If it's not what I want, then I'm packing up and going home, so to speak. So a self-reflective awareness around what is your strengths as an entrepreneur, and what are your weaknesses, and having tolerance, compassion, and forgiveness around that, appreciation for what you're great at, a willingness to toggle back into emotionally focused coping and learning the skills that underpin that capacity, because it is a rugged thing, this whole entrepreneurial journey. And if you're lucky enough to really just punch out a cogent business model and hit the bullseye, which some people do, that's brilliant. And then knowing when is enough for that, often these things have no ceiling. And so never forgetting the primacy of the relationship. The truth is, when you're really good at this stuff, you have a kind companion with you in your back pocket who sees you in your victories and in your struggles. And interestingly, we don't just get to drink the Kool-Aid of that without working at it. We ourselves have to deliver that friendship, deliver that tolerance, be that friend before we can receive that friendship. That's a very important point, and it's difficult to do when our stress strikes. And this is my advice to everyone: be kind and generous to themselves on the journey. Be willing to toggle and build your ecosystem and stay with it over time. Continuing to toggle until you find your place where you deliver your best stuff in a way that meets the market and where they're at. And as Andrew, with me, what's really become apparent, because I work with lawyers, is the market for lawyers. They don't want my, 8-week programs and my, with some exceptions. They want small, pithy 1-hour pieces. So they're not going to get all of what I can bring and what I love to do, but they'll totally connect with this thing here. So it's about, again, limit setting from the 5 friendship functions, not tantruming because they don't want my big thing. Meet the client where they're at and regulate your emotions accordingly.
I love that. That really talks to that consistency and persistence to stay on the journey and tic-tac and pivot till you find that niche that really clicks.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time today. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. And I'm sure everyone else did as well. Where can we find you online if we want to find out more?
You can email me at cam@bemindful.com.au. On Twitter is b_mindful. And I'm sure we've got a Facebook page as well, Mindful Therapy, I think it is. That's where you can find me. And also the website, mindfultherapy.com.au, has some useful video and some stuff that starts to kind of deepen a sense of what it is that I talk about and what it is that I do. Always happy to hear from people, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll link to all of that in the show notes. And
sure.
Thank you again, Cam. This has been amazing.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. So there you go, Cameron Aggs. What did I tell you? Now you can see why I was so excited to be able to have this chat with Cameron and bring all of his wisdom, or at least a really good snapshot of it to you. There's plenty more where that came from. So do go and check him out at the links that we'll link to from the show notes. And leave us a comment. If you've got any questions for Cam, we can I'm sure he'll reply. If you've got any questions for us, what do you want to see more of on the show? What did you love? And leave us a like. And otherwise, we'll talk to you soon. Talk to you on the next show. All right. See you, everyone.
That was the Heal and Transform podcast with Andrew Ramsden. If you enjoyed the episode or found it valuable, ask yourself, who else do you know who would benefit from it? Pass it on or send them to healandtransform.org/podcast. And until next time, remember, to make a bigger positive impact, we need to leverage ourselves, tap into the right technology, and collaborate, because we can only heal and transform the world together.